We got some nice weather here for a couple of days. I wanted to set up a paint rack outside and get that aileron and flap painted with a poly brush and a poly spray and set up a paint rack like I did when I painted them with the primer. But it's too windy out here. It's blowing 15 or so, and those things would swing around pretty bad. Everything's flopping around pretty good here in the wind. Should have done it yesterday, but I lost most of the day yesterday. I spent about 5 hours on the phone with a friend of mine. He's been having some trouble with PTSD, the first person he's called and talked to in about a month, so I didn't want to brush him off. It's kind of funny how you can be okay with that stuff for about 50 years, and then when you get older, it all of a sudden starts hitting you pretty hard. But he's got some physical problems and stuff too, some complications from getting blown up and stuff over in Vietnam, and of course complications from Agent Orange. Well, anyway, it was important for me to talk to him. What I did do, I came out and opened up the hangar door, and I needed to do that to get the wings on, but that's not the reason. I opened up the hangar door so I could get the ladder in there. I had to get up over on my shelf to get my paint spray guns out. I want to use those old Harbor Freight guns for spraying that poly spray and stuff on. Anyway, I got those out and getting my paint guns cleaned up and stuff. Since I can't paint today, I decided to work on the airplane a little bit. I got the wings out, and then I moved the airplane over on the center line of the hangar so we can get the wings in there on both sides. And I've got one thing that I forgot about doing that I've got to get done before I put the wings on. I've got to put a hole in my fabric and stuff on the fuselage where the rib goes for the aileron cables to pass through. I neglected that, so that's what I'm setting up to do now. Got my little soldering iron out and plugged in and heating up, and I'm going to use that to cut out the holes in the fabric there on that fuselage. And then once I get those holes cut out, then I can cut the kydex out with a roto broach tool. Well, there's where the cables, the aileron cable, come out. That's the pass-through cable or the carry-through cable, and that connects with a connector or with a link in the center of the fuselage right over the pilot's head, basically. That runs through the wing and then goes through a pulley and then goes down through the bottom of the wing, and that goes to the bottom of the aileron. I measured that out from the wing spar over and from the top of the rib down and got a idea where the holes got to go through there. So now we got to cut a hole in the fuselage for that. And here's what I got laid out on the fuselage for that. This is the hinge. This is where the spar goes. I measured out 3/4 of an inch from the spar, which is about what it was there on that wing, and then down I think 3/4 of an inch to an inch. And so that's where my hole's got to go through there. There's a structural member there, a tube that goes through right there, so that's where it's got to go, is right there. Got to do that on both sides, so I'll get that done, get the hole punched in there, and then that'll be ready, and we can run the cables through there. I have to get the wings on, and I'm going to put new aileron cables on. They have a longer length that you can get to make up the extra width of the fuselage to go in there, but I'm just going to go ahead and put new cables on, just like I'm doing on all the rest of the controls. We'll have all new, brand new stainless steel cables on everything. The hole is in there for that cable to pass through. I used a soldering iron to go through this outside, cut this fabric out, and then a rotor broach to cut the hole out to go through there. I may have to modify that hole a little bit in the kydex on the inside with a file or something once I get that cable through there, but it's there now. And there's a structural member, that tube that goes right across here, and right there is exposed in that fabric. Now there's a fair lead for that cable coming out of the wing to support it, but just in case it drags on this tube a little bit, I put a piece of that fiberglass tape on there for the cable to ride on instead of that tube. I couldn't get the hole drilled in from the inside. If I'd have done that before I put the skylight on, I could have done it, but the skylight and there's other tubes that go across there all interfere with getting in there from the inside, so I had to drill the hole in from the outside here. I don't think there's anything else that I have to do with anything to get ready to put that wing on. At least on these two, I'm going to have to take a reamer and go through those holes in that bracket on the fuselage where the wing struts attach to before those bolts get put in there. But I got the first wing up like I was afraid of. That fuel line that comes from the belly tank up into the fuel tank The one in the fuel tank is too long there, doesn't match up, so we're going to have to pull that wing off there. Cut that fuel line back and get the beading tool out and put a bead on it so I can get the flexible lines on there. Now I can mark it, figure out how much I need to cut off, and everything else looks good. First wing is on. Of course, it's not mounted all the way. I just got pins in there, but it's up. That's good. They're up and on, or up and in, mounted up. More or less. We still got some work to do to get them on there, but they're there. That's better than it was. We've got these wings off the wing stand and in here set up on the airplane. They're not mounted up yet. They're just set there in position, but that's a big step. It didn't go as bad as I thought it was going to. I'd measured those wings out and then measured out my hanger, and I thought that right wing was going to stick out quite a ways over onto that shelf that I have there above my workbench. So I cleaned it off and I put towels on it to hold that wingtip up on, and I was worrying about how he's going to hoist the airplane when we get ready to put it on floats. But once we got that wingtip in there, it did rest on that bench, on that shelf while we got it in position, but once we started pulling it in to get it in on the fuselage, the wingtip just barely fit on that shelf. We had to go find something else to set up for a stand over there. I got a bucket and some foam pads and stuff and set it up on it. Anyway, it just barely overhangs that shelf there, which is not much different than it was before. So that's a relief there. I won't have to take that upper shelf off to get the wing up when I hoist the airplane to put it on floats. The left side over here is the same way. It's got plenty of clearance on it. There was nothing put over here on this left wing to interfere with it, so it fits up there pretty good. Both wings are setting on there, and we've put pins in them in the hinges, just drift pins in there to hold them on. I had stands set up here underneath the wing tips to hold them up, and they turned out to be a little bit low, but that was fine for setting it up on. So I fixed up some hangers there on that truss back there when I tore the airplane apart the first time to put straps on there to hoist that wing on. And so I put some big 2-inch wide cargo straps on there, but I've got this left wing supported and I've got the right wing supported. I'm going to have to pull the left wing out away from the fuselage. I anticipated that. That fuel line that comes up from the belly tank is too long, so I'm going to have to cut one of them off before I can get the hoses on there. Otherwise, that left side is pretty good. The right side, I'm going to have to pull it away too. I didn't anticipate that that front hinge was going to be tight there, so that spar won't fit into that front hinge. It's just too tight. We've got it in there enough to get a pin started in it, but I'm going to have to pull that out and probably scrape the powder coat off of that and clean that up a little bit so we get enough clearance in there for that spar to slide in there in that front hinge. Seems like the back one goes in pretty good. Otherwise, everything lines up good. All the fuel lines line up just like they were supposed to. That's a good thing. That's looking good. I've got both wings supported with straps there in the air now, and I can move them around as I need to get them on, and I can handle them by myself now. My son helped me bring them in and put them up there. My wife helped a little bit, but it's mostly my son and I. The two of us were able to handle them.